What's up, everyone? Steve here from socialtransformation.us. I just discovered a study the other day that I wanted to share with you guys. The study's called What I Believe is True: Belief Confirming Reasoning Bias in Social Anxiety Disorder. So that's a bit of a mouthful, but I'll break down the study for you guys. It's actually not even published yet. The study's going to be published in the Journal of Behavioral Therapy and Experimental Psychiatry in December. But I got a hold of the study early, and it has some really interesting insights. So I want to share those with you. Basically, what these researchers did was they tested a belief bias in individuals with social anxiety. So, for example, they broke it down into sort of logical statements. So, one example is an elephant is bigger than a dog is bigger than a mouse, therefore, an elephant is bigger than a mouse. That's true. That's true, and it's logical. So, people were given these logical statements and they were told whether to rank them as true or false, or whether the logic was true or false. So something can be logical the way it's formatted, but it won't necessarily be true. For example, if a mouse is bigger than a dog and a dog is bigger than an elephant, then a mouse is bigger than an elephant. Now that's logically true based on those things. If a mouse is bigger than a dog and a dog is bigger than an elephant, then a mouse is bigger than an elephant. Now, in the real world, we know that's not true. We know that a mouse is not bigger than an elephant. So when people read those statements, they're more likely to say that the logic is wrong, or they're going to take more time to think about it before they say that the logic is true. So by having a mismatch between the actual true belief that you believe inside your head versus the logical argument of it, you can determine how much someone believes in something. So they tried doing this with statements about social anxiety. And they asked a group of people who have social anxiety, and then they also asked a bunch of normal people, a control group. So an example of how this would work with social anxiety is you would say, I am less likable than Jane, and Jane is less likable than John. Therefore, I am less likable than John. So that statement is logically true. And when people who have social anxiety read those statements, they're more likely to say, yes, that's true, that's logically true. They don't take any time to think about it because it confirms their pre-existing beliefs about themselves and their social anxiety. Now, if you said, I am more likable than Jane, and Jane is more likable than John, therefore I am more likable than John. And when people who have social anxiety read that statement, it makes logical sense, but it doesn't match with their belief. So they'll either rate it as false, or they'll take more time to process the information. Because even though the logic is correct, it's more difficult for them to accept it as true because they don't actually believe that they're likable. So this was a very interesting study, and it shows that people who do have social anxiety are more likely to have negative beliefs about themselves. And they're more likely to ignore evidence that contradicts those beliefs, right? So if I truly believe that I am not a likable person, and I used to believe that when I was much younger, I used to believe that if anyone really got to know me, then they're not going to like me. And that influences how I see the world and how I interact with people. So when I interact with someone and they don't seem to like me, I am like, oh, of course they don't like me. I'm not a likable person, so why would they like me? And that sticks in your head. But if you think you're a less likable person and you actually interact with someone who does like you and thinks you're pretty cool, you're not going to think about that so much. You're going to be like, oh, maybe they just don't really know me, or they don't really like me. I think about all these other times where people don't like me. That's the true me. The true me is not likable. So this study confirms supports the idea that people who have social anxiety also have a sort of warped and distorted way of distorted beliefs about themselves. And this also supports the idea that cognitive therapy can often help these people. If you have negative beliefs about yourself and they're stuck in your mind, by working through those beliefs, by challenging them, and by trying to find evidence that contradicts those beliefs, you can slowly break away from those old beliefs and start believing in newer beliefs that actually serve you and your relationships. So this is definitely a factor of social anxiety. I don't think that thinking is everything. Like, oh, you just need to think more positively. You just need to change your thinking and everything will fix itself. Like, social anxiety is influenced by a lot of different factors. It's part biological. It might just be how your biology is set up. Your nervous system is more sensitive than most people. It could be environmental. You've had experiences from the past with family or friends that have ingrained in you this idea that you're not a good person, you're not a likable person. And also your thoughts and how you actually think about the world influences your social anxiety. So I always like to remind everyone that there's a bunch of different factors that can influence your social anxiety. But one of those factors is how you think about yourself and the beliefs you have about yourself. So I'm not claiming that just changing your beliefs will magically fix everything, but I do think that this is something that people need to work on if they want to overcome their social anxiety. And studies like this show that it's true that people who have social anxiety tend to have more distorted beliefs that confirm their social anxiety and help it and feed into it. And that's why it becomes a cycle. It becomes a cycle that you keep feeding into, that it's hard to break out of. So I thought this was a really interesting study. I wanted to share it with you guys. It's very relevant to a lot of the things that I teach on social transformation about playing with your thoughts and trying to break away from old patterns of thinking, old beliefs that don't serve you. So I hope you guys found that interesting. I'll be back on here again soon. So have a good one, guys. I hope you guys are all well.